the Houthis certainly aren't inclined to back down in any shape or form at the moment. And in fact, they've come out even since these strikes happened last night and said that their people are resolute in their refusal to surrender. So, yeah, I think there's not going to be any let up for the international shipping at the moment. And in fact, now it has made US and British owned vessels, commercial vessels or linked vessels, even more vulnerable.
So the US and the UK have hit 8 targets in Yemen. Let's get more details from Iona Craig, who reports on the region. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What do we know about what has been hit?
Well, we know that the strikes that were carried out targeted 4 governorates across Yemen, and all in Houthi-controlled territory, and several locations within the capital, Sana'a specifically, which were all military bases of various types, including Al-Dalami, which is the air base that was hit the last time on the 21st of January in the US-UK strikes then. In fact, all of those locations in Sana'a, those military bases that were hit last night, have been targeted multiple times by the Saudi-led coalition during their air war in Yemen between 2015 and 2022. So these were military targets, but yes, in several governorates across the country, Al-Baida, Taiz, Hadja, and Sana'a, all in Houthi-controlled territory.
This is fewer targets than last time. I think it was 60 last time. This time it was 8. Is the number irrelevant? Is it more about the kind of targets this time?
Yes, I think obviously in the period of the last 10, 11 days since the first round of strikes, the US would have been able to establish the locations that the Houthis have been using since then to target vessels in the Red Sea. This governorate, Al-Baida, is particularly relevant. It's the most southern governorate that the Houthis control, the most southern area in Yemen. And that obviously is the closest, therefore, to the Gulf of Aden, where more of these attacks have been happening in the last 10 days, whereas previously the majority of them were happening in the Red Sea itself. But now the attacks that we've seen in the last 10 days have been mostly in the Gulf of Aden. So geographically, that's the site we know the US on its own, without UK support, has also been targeting with strikes since January 12th until now, where they said there were ballistic missiles being ready to be launched, and the US carried out preemptive strikes against those. So yes, I think it's just a shift in the locations of where vessels are being attacked has therefore led to a sharper focus on where the US is seeing these launch sites as coming from.
So how do we gauge how effective the strikes have been in stopping the action by the Houthis in the Red Sea? Because, I mean, as you've pointed out, clearly when there is danger, there are fewer vessels. And, we've spoken to at least one shipping company last week that said that they had suspended putting any of their vessels down that particular route. But so how do we gauge whether actually this has made any difference if there are fewer vessels there in the first place?
I think that's a hard one to measure. I think what we have seen in the last 10 days is the Houthis actually hitting vessels now with the attacks that they have carried out. They've specifically targeting US vessels as well, not just the warships, but the cargo vessels that are either US owned or US flagged. And prior to the strikes that began on January 12th, they hadn't actually hit any vessels. They had been targeting many, over 30 now, but they hadn't actually hit any. And what they've done now is actually hit vessels, not done serious damage that has made them unseaworthy. So in some respects, you could argue that their capability has improved rather than been reduced by these strikes. They do have a great ability to move these munitions around, the mobility of their launch facilities, because they've been targeted by the Saudi coalition in 7 years prior to these airstrikes being carried out. So they're well able to move the launch sites of their ballistic missiles and their cruise missiles. And of course, they've been using drones as well. And those are much more easily hidden. They have the ability to launch those from areas that are not as obvious, let's say, as cruise missile and and ballistic missile sites. So yeah, it makes it incredibly difficult. And the Houthis have said that they will continue carrying out attacks. So I don't think there's any indication at the moment that their capability has been reduced enough to stop them from attacking vessels in the Red Sea.
Mm.
That's certainly not the case.
And therefore, what does that mean in terms of the long-term situation? Is this something that will continue until the war in Gaza comes to some kind of conclusion, or is it? Or are there stocks of weapons being replenished as soon as they're being destroyed?
Yes, and answers both those questions, really. I mean, the Houthis have made it very clear that they won't stop until there is a ceasefire in Gaza, until Israel stops its bombardment. And this looking very open-ended at the moment, because there's no indication that there's anything close to that in Gaza at the moment, or that there is going to even be a humanitarian pause that we saw last year in Gaza when the Houthis did stop their attacks in the Red Sea. So yes, it's looking very open-ended for the US at the moment, and the Houthis certainly aren't inclined to back down in any shape or form at the moment. And in fact, they've come out even since these strikes happened last night and said that their people are resolute in their refusal to surrender. So
Mm.
yeah, I think there's not going to be any let up for the international shipping at the moment. And in fact, now it has made US and British owned vessels, commercial vessels or linked vessels, even more vulnerable.